The peaceful Sydney night was pierced by the sudden hum of an alien craft descending from the sky. Mark Johnson, jolted awake by an instinctive sense of danger, leapt from his bed. The oppressive glow of the ship's lights bathed the house in an eerie luminescence, casting long, sinister shadows. "Lily!" Mark's voice echoed through the house, filled with a father's desperate urgency. He sprinted to his daughter's room, his heart pounding with dread. The door to Lily's room stood ajar. Mark pushed it open with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the room frantically. The bed was empty, the sheets tangled and discarded on the floor. His worst fears confirmed. Mark's breath caught in his throat as he saw the window shattered, a cold breeze whispering through the broken glass. "Mark, what's happening?" Sarah's voice trembled from the hallway. She appeared behind him, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "They've taken her," Mark said, his voice a mix of rage and helplessness. "The Draxons. I saw their ship." Sarah's gasp echoed his own shock. The Draxons were an alien race notorious for their emotionless demeanor and advanced technology. They viewed human emotions as weaknesses, and now they had taken their precious Lily. "I'll get her back," Mark vowed, his voice hardening with resolve. He turned, grabbing his jacket and keys. "I promise you, I'll bring her home." The drive to his workshop was a blur. Mark's mind raced with plans and contingencies. He knew the Draxon's technology was far superior to anything he had ever encountered, but he also knew his daughter's life depended on his ingenuity and determination. Entering the garage, Mark flicked on the lights, revealing an organized chaos of tools, schematics, and half-finished projects. He immediately set to work, his hands moving with a precision born of desperation. He hacked into the government's database, searching for any information on the Draxon ships and their vulnerabilities. Every click of the keyboard, every line of code, brought him closer to Lily. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Mark's engineering skills were pushed to their limits as he retrofitted an old military drone with advanced weaponry and navigation systems. Sweat dripped from his brow, his muscles ached, but he pushed on, driven by the image of his daughter's smiling face. "Mark, you have to rest," Sarah's voice broke through the haze of his focus. She stood at the garage door, her eyes filled with concern. "I can't, Sarah," he replied, not looking up from his work. "I have to be ready. I have to save her." Sarah stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We will save her, together. But you need to stay strong. For Lily." Her words gave him the strength he needed. He nodded, taking a brief moment to squeeze her hand before returning to his work. The drone was nearly complete, its sleek form a testament to his relentless drive. As dawn broke over the city, Mark's preparations were finally complete. He stood back, surveying his creation with grim satisfaction. The drone was now a formidable piece of technology, ready to take on the Draxons. Mark loaded the drone into his truck, his heart a mix of fear and determination. "I'm coming for you, Lily," he whispered to himself, as much a promise as a prayer. With the first light of day breaking the horizon, Mark set off toward the unknown, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. The Draxons thought human emotions made them weak. They were about to learn just how powerful a father's love could be. The morning sun cast long shadows across the landscape as Mark's truck sped toward the outskirts of Sydney. His mind was a whirl of calculations and strategies, each thought sharpening his resolve. The alien ship's faint signal flickered on the drone's modified radar, a beacon guiding him toward his daughter. Mark's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on him. He had to remain focused. He couldn't afford any mistakes. As he approached the old airfield, his makeshift headquarters, he spotted his friend and colleague, Jason, waiting by the hangar. "Mark, are you sure about this?" Jason called out, his face etched with concern as Mark stepped out of the truck. "This isn't just a hardware problem. It's a suicide mission." "I don't have a choice, Jason," Mark replied, his voice steely. "They took Lily. I have to get her back." Jason nodded, understanding the depth of his friend's desperation. "Let's see what we're working with," he said, motioning towards the drone. They walked to the back of the truck, where Mark unveiled his creation. The drone gleamed under the harsh sunlight, its modifications evident in its sleek, armored plating, and advanced weaponry. It's impressive, Jason admitted, running his hand over the cold metal. But do you really think this will be enough? It has to be, Mark said, his eyes blazing with determination. I've programmed it to track the Draxan energy signatures. Once I'm inside their ship, I'll find Lily and get her out. Jason sighed, knowing he couldn't dissuade Mark. All right, let's get you prepped then. You'll need more than just the drone. I've got some old gear that might help. Inside the hangar, Jason rummaged through a dusty storage locker, pulling out various pieces of military-grade equipment. Mark strapped on a vest lined with advanced sensors and a helmet equipped with a heads-up display. Each piece felt like a step closer to rescuing Lily. As they finished the preparations, Mark felt a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. The drone hummed to life, its systems checked and ready. Mark climbed into the cockpit, adjusting the controls to his specifications. Mark, be careful, Jason urged, his voice tight with worry. If anything happens, I'll be fine, Mark interrupted, giving his friend a reassuring look. I have to be. With a final nod, Mark activated the drone's engines. The ground shook as the powerful thrusters lifted the craft into the sky. Mark's eyes were fixed on the radar, the alien signal growing stronger with each passing moment. The landscape blurred below him, his focus unyielding. The drone's advanced sensors picked up the faint trace of the Draxan ship's energy signature, leading him to a remote area deep within the Blue Mountains. The tension in Mark's chest tightened as he approached the alien vessel's location. He landed the drone a safe distance away, cloaking it with an energy field to avoid detection. The air was thick with anticipation as he approached the Draxan ship on foot, his every sense heightened. The sleek, obsidian hull of the alien craft loomed before him, pulsating with an eerie blue light. Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. He activated the helmet scanning systems, mapping out the ship's interior. Each step felt like a test of his resolve, the weight of his mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. He found an access panel, its alien technology unfamiliar but not insurmountable. With deft hands, he bypassed the security protocols, the door hissing open to reveal the dimly lit corridor beyond. The ship's interior was a maze of sleek, metallic passageways, each turn a potential trap. Mark moved silently, his heart pounding in his chest. The drone's sensors fed him real-time data, guiding him deeper into the ship. The faint sound of alien machinery echoed around him, the tension rising with each step. He reached a junction, the path diverging in two directions. The drone's display flickered, highlighting the route to the holding cells. Mark's pulse quickened. He was close. He could feel it. As he approached the cells, a sudden noise made him freeze. Voices.
Alien voices.
He pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear. They were discussing a new prisoner, a human child. Lily. Mark's jaw tightened, his resolve hardening. He was on the right path. The next step would be critical. He had to move quickly and without hesitation. With a deep breath, Mark stepped into the corridor, his mind focused and his heart set on one goal: saving Lily. The battle was far from over, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. Mark's pulse quickened as he crouched behind an angular outcropping, just meters from the holding cells. The sterile scent of the Draxan ship mingled with the metallic tang of fear in the back of his throat. He took a steadying breath, his thoughts a storm of determination and desperation. A pair of Draxan guards conversed in their guttural tongue, their tall, slender forms moving with an almost mechanical precision. Mark's enhanced helmet translated their speech, snippets of their conversation leaking through. Human child, observed for emotional response. Mark clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. He had to act swiftly and decisively. As the guards turned down a side corridor, Mark sprang into action, his steps silent and calculated. He reached the control panel outside the holding cells, fingers flying over the alien symbols. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a dimly lit room lined with cells. "Dad?" Lily's small, frightened voice cut through the darkness. Mark's heart leapt. "Lily, it's me," he whispered, rushing to her. She stood at the front of her cell, tears glistening in her eyes but a determined look on her face. "Dad, they said you wouldn't come," she stammered. They don't know your father, Mark said, forcing a smile as he worked to open her cell. They don't know what humans are capable of. The lock clicked, and the door swung open. Lily flew into his arms, her small frame trembling against him. Mark held her tightly, the relief washing over him momentarily before the urgency of their situation reasserted itself. We have to move, Lily. Stay close and be quiet, okay? Mark instructed, his voice low but firm. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but also a spark of courage. They slipped back into the corridor, Mark leading the way with the drone's sensors scanning for any sign of danger. The ship's layout unfurled on his HUD, guiding them through the labyrinthine structure. As they turned a corner, the drone alerted him to an approaching patrol. Mark pulled Lily into an alcove, pressing her against the wall as they watched the Draxan soldiers pass by, their conversation a low rumble. "Why do they hate us, Dad?" Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "They think our emotions make us weak," Mark replied, keeping his eyes on the soldiers. "But they're wrong. It's our emotions that make us strong. It's why I'm here." Lily squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his words. They continued their cautious advance, each step a test of nerves and resolve. Mark's mind raced, evaluating escape routes and contingency plans. The tension built with every second, the ship's cold, alien architecture closing in around them. They reached an intersection, the path to their exit blocked by a force field. Mark's fingers danced over his wrist console, hacking into the Draxan systems. The force field flickered, then deactivated. Just as they were about to move, an alarm blared, the ship's red emergency lights casting ominous shadows. "Dad, what do we do?" Lily's voice wavered, fear creeping back in. "We run," Mark said, his voice steady. "Stay with me, no matter what." They sprinted down the corridor, the sound of pursuing footsteps echoing behind them. Mark's breath came in sharp gasps, his muscles burning with exertion. He could see the drone's cloaked position ahead, their only hope of escape. As they rounded the final corner, a squad of Draxan soldiers blocked their path, weapons drawn. Mark skidded to a halt, pushing Lily behind him. "Stay back," he shouted, drawing a modified blaster from his belt. The Draxan leader stepped forward, a cruel smile twisting its lips. "You are brave, human, but futile. Surrender." Mark's eyes blazed with defiance. "Not a chance." Mark stood his ground, blaster steady in his hand. The squad of Draxan soldiers loomed ahead, their weapons trained on him and Lily. The air was thick with tension. Each breath Mark took measured and deliberate. The Draxan leader's eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. "Last chance, human. Surrender now, and your child might be spared." Mark's grip tightened on the blaster. "You don't understand us at all," he replied, his voice unwavering. "We don't abandon our own." With a sudden, calculated move, Mark fired, the shot sizzling through the air and striking the nearest soldier. The corridor erupted into chaos. Mark grabbed Lily's hand, pulling her towards the cloaked drone. The Draxans returned fire, blue plasma bolts narrowly missing their targets. "Keep your head down," Mark shouted over the din, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He ducked and weaved, his every sense heightened, driven by sheer determination and the primal need to protect his daughter. Lily clung to him, her small frame trembling but her steps quick and sure. They reached the drone, Mark's fingers flying over the control pad to deactivate the cloak and open the hatch. He pushed Lily inside, her wide eyes meeting his with a mix of fear and trust. "Hurry, Dad," she urged, her voice a tight whisper. Mark turned to face the advancing soldiers, his blaster spitting fire. The Draxans were relentless, their mechanical precision a stark contrast to Mark's raw, desperate energy. He knew they had to move now or be overwhelmed. As the last Draxan fell, Mark leapt into the drone, sealing the hatch behind him. "Hang on, Lily," he called, strapping her into the co-pilot seat. The drone's engines roared to life, the familiar hum a reassurance in the chaos. Mark engaged the thrusters, the force pressing them back into their seats as the drone rocketed skyward. The alien vessel grew smaller below them, the stars stretching out in an endless expanse. Mark's eyes flicked between the controls and the radar, scanning for any signs of pursuit. His breath came in ragged gasps, the reality of their narrow escape settling over him. "Are we safe?" Lily asked, her voice small in the vastness of space. Mark reached over, squeezing her hand. "We are for now, sweetheart. But we're not out of the woods yet." The radar pinged, alerting them to an approaching Draxon ship. Mark's heart sank. They were still being hunted. He pushed the drone harder, the engines whining in protest. The Draxon craft was faster, closing the distance rapidly. "Dad, what do we do?" Lily's voice trembled with fear. Mark's mind raced. They needed a diversion, something to buy them time. His eyes landed on the asteroid belt ahead, a dense field of tumbling rocks and debris. It was risky, but it was their best shot. "Hold on tight, Lily. We're going through there," he said, steering the drone towards the asteroids. The drone weaved through the treacherous field, Mark's hands steady on the controls. The Draxon ship followed, its weapons firing sporadically, bolts of plasma flashing past them. Mark's focus was absolute, his every move precise and deliberate. As they neared the heart of the asteroid belt, Mark deployed a series of flares, their bright light and heat signatures confusing the Draxon sensors. The pursuing ship faltered, its shots going wide. Mark seized the opportunity, pushing the drone to its limits. They emerged from the asteroid field, the Draxon ship a distant blur behind them. Mark set a course for Earth, his body finally relaxing as the immediate danger passed. He glanced over at Lily, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but filled with relief. "We did it, Dad," she whispered, a small smile tugging at her lips. Mark smiled back, the weight of their ordeal beginning to lift. "Yeah, we did. We're going home." The stars stretched out before them, a silent testament to their survival and the indomitable strength of human love and determination. The legend of their escape would spread, a story of a father's wrath and a daughter's courage, forever redefining what it meant to be human in the eyes of the galaxy. As the drone sped towards Earth, Mark held Lily's hand, the bond between them unbreakable. The journey was far from over, but together they could face anything. The darkness of space gave way to the pale blue of their home planet, a promise of a new beginning.